Did you know that 66% of Canadians between the ages of 35 to 54 don't have a written financial plan? And it's not because they don't care about money. It's usually because they don't know who to trust or where to even start. And that leads us to one of the most searched questions out there. How do I know if a financial advisor has my best interest in mind? And if you're raising kids, juggling debt, or trying to think about retirement without panicking, you're not alone. In this episode, we're going to help you figure out what kind of financial advisor actually fits your stage of life, because the right advisor will help you protect your family and build wealth and confidence. The wrong one, well, they can lead you down a path that wasn't even meant for you. Welcome to our podcast, Keeping It Real, where we talk about real financial problems with real people and come up with real financial solutions. My name is Irene Meyer.
And I'm Philip Villanueva. Welcome, everybody. By the time we're done today, here are 3 things you're going to walk away with. First, you'll understand the 3 most common types of financial advisors and what they actually do. Second, we'll help you match your life stage to the kind of advice you really need. And third, we'll give you the right questions to ask before you sign anything. These are the questions that will help you figure out, how do I know if a financial advisor actually has my best interest in mind? Okay, so picture this. You're standing in your kitchen, you look at your house plant and you realize it's wilting. Are you going to grab that fire extinguisher and spray your plant, right? Like technically it's a tool, right? And it sprays, but it's not made for that job. That's what it's like when you work with a financial advisor who isn't right for your current stage in your life. You might have a tool in hand, but it can do more harm than good. If you're in your 30s and someone's pushing you into aggressive investments when you're still building income, that's like grabbing the fire extinguisher, right? If you're in your 50s and your advisor still treats you like you have 30 years to go, again, you're grabbing for that fire extinguisher. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had a client one time, and she had an advisor, right? An advisor that, that she had been working with for some time, only his advice was stuck back in an era when she was in more financial peril per se. She was clear of debt. She had, if I remember thinking back, 2 children and herself, a single mother. All right. She didn't have anything in place for her children, right? She didn't have a retirement set up for herself. Everything was still debt recovery. She was clear of debt, right? Her advisor hadn't fixed anything and moving forward in her life, right? So I came across her. We looked at what she had in place. She was using the fire extinguisher, right? Putting out the right tool for that time, actually. It was the right tool for that time. She was putting out her fire, but her advisor wasn't maintaining. If she wasn't reaching out to her advisor, he wasn't reaching out to her. Right. So it was a one-way street. And that's for me, that's a red flag that he's thinking more about his commission and not about her. Right. And so I spoke to her, and my very first thing I said, 1, if you believe in your advisor, my advice is go back and speak with him. That was how we opened our relationship, right? If you trust him, my advice, go talk to him, work out whatever you need to work out, because I don't want to step on anyone's toes if you have a relationship already, right? And then when she said, no, that's why I'm reaching out to you, is because there's problems there, right? He hasn't reached out to me. That's fair enough. Okay, so I spoke with her. I laid out everything. I set up a nice plan for her and her children, everything of that nature, right? Everything was laid out to move forward, right? A full strict financial plan, everything laid out on paper, everything that she could literally follow, kind of like a guidebook, if you will, right? As we're setting everything up, now the father is getting involved, the brother is getting involved, all these other people are getting involved because they knew of the previous advisor, right? They knew that previous advisor and what was done back in 5 or 10 years ago, whatever, right? They didn't know who I was. So they're all saying all this to her. And then all of a sudden now that previous advisor is getting wind that she's thinking about doing something else and now steps in, right? And causing so much mismatched advice that it was confusing the client now, right? The client is now stuck in the middle. And all I can say is, if you're going to trust your previous advisor, then do that, right? But understand that they weren't there reaching out to you when you needed the help. Second, if you're going to listen to your father or your brother or anyone else, are they licensed to give the advice that they are giving? Do they have any education that way? Is that their career, right? So understand that you're getting advice from people who might be watching a YouTube channel of somebody who might not even be a licensed advisor, might just be some podcaster who's just trying to get, reviews and hits and likes on their podcast. So they're feeding off of an actual advisor's information. So you're getting secondhand advice now, right? Or are you actually getting advice from somebody who's right here in front of you that's licensed, that's actually been doing this and giving advice, this kind of advice to other people, not just yourself, right? What are you going to do? That person got so confused, they went back to their previous advisor because that's who they know. And I'm almost 100% sure hasn't done anything. And you're talking about a single mother with kids, right? The advice that was being given by their peers when they told me what was being told did not fit their budget, did not fit their current lifestyle, was not something that was going to work for them, right? For somebody else, 100% it could have, right? But not for them, right? And that's where it's really, really important when you are dealing with, with your advisor, you're going to get that outsourced and possibly mismatched advice, right? You have to be careful of what you're going to take in.
Yeah, and that leads us to the types of financial professionals that are out there. There are actually 3 types of financial professionals out there, and you've actually kind of given me the examples on how to explain them. So the product pusher is one example of a financial professional. They're usually commission based. They sell insurance or investments. Not bad, only best if you actually know exactly what you need. Okay, so in your example, the previous advisor is the product pusher, right? They're the product pusher, but it wasn't the best thing for her because she didn't know exactly what she needed. So not a good scenario there. We have the second type of financial professional, the planner. Might be fee-based. They charge based on a flat fee for a plan. They focus on strategy, budgeting, timelines. Great if you want a plan and not just a product. But what they lack, and this might be the family members, I think, they're not professionals, but they're kind of the ones that focus on all these things, but they don't have the tools for her to actually execute. They just have the strategy and the idea. And then you have the hybrid guide, a professional like, Phil or I, where we actually have the license to both plan, and sell, right? We have the capability to listen to the person's life stage and their goals and their dreams, offer both the strategy and the tools. And so if you think about it like this, a very simple analogy, you have a hammer that does one job in a toolbox, and you also have a Swiss Army knife, right? So you have a hammer that does one job by hammering nails or taking nails out, and you have this tool called the Swiss Army knife that kind of does a lot more things. So the product pusher is like a hammer, useful for only one thing. The planner is your toolbox, I guess, where they all sit. They can fix and organize, but they don't include the tools, right? And the hybrid is the Swiss Army knife, where they're flexible, strategic, and they're actually built to adapt to every client.
Now that we understand, there's different kind of advisors out there, and what potentially they will do or how they can help you. Let's talk about the next main point, the life stage matching. Now, this is very, very important. Let's talk about where you are. The life stage matters more than what most people think. Your current life stage matters very, very much. Here's how we break it down. Stage 1, starting out, let's say you're in your 30s. Someone in their 30s is going to look at protection, income protection, emergency funds, your basic TFSAs and RSPs, right? Now, what's the best advisor for that? Maybe somebody who's a hybrid or a planner who simplifies and supports, right? Somebody who is going to, who has the tools, right, to help you out, but also is willing to set up that initial game plan on, okay, here's what we need to do. Here's the tools on what we need to get started, right? Then you have, let's call it the sandwich phase, the 40s to 50s, right? At that point, you're going to need some, budgeting. You might have incurred some debts at this point because in your 30s you might have bought a house or bought a car or something. So now you're starting to, you've incurred some debt, and your kids, you're now older parents. You're thinking about, I have kids now, and well, all parents should be thinking about my kids' futures, right? I want them to have a better and more stable future than I had, right? Things of that nature, or I want to cushion them into getting started in their life as well. So there, same thing. You're going to want to look at the planner or hybrid, somebody who can look at the full picture, right? And look at everything, get to know where you're at, what's happening, and start to plan out, okay, we're not just taking the tools to get started, but we also have to take those tools now, take them out of the toolbox and start building that future, right? And actually start developing that future and lay it all out for you. So we have we're looking into the horizon and able to see the direction we're heading towards now, right? And then we have our pre-retirement, the 50s to 60s. And some of us might know that age. Irene, I'm not sure if we do, but some of us might know it. The income planning, right? No, now what's going to be very important is taxes, right? Tax preparation, making sure that as we're in our ladder, remember, we talked about before, as we get older, we don't have that same rebounding effect, right? In past videos, we've talked about that, but the rebounding effect, that's the 50s and 60s now. We're not going to have that cushion that we had in our 30s and 40s, right? 50s and 60s now, we need to make sure that our income is fully laid out, and that's incorporating the taxes that we're going to have to incur and possibly get like long-term care facilities and what's going to happen when we can no longer earn income, right? We have to prepare for that. Now, the best advisor that you're going to look at for something of that nature is someone with holistic planning experience, somebody who has done this before, right? Because of the fact that they need to have experienced the ups and downs and possible obstacles that somebody is going to incur in this life stage, right? And then the fourth stage that we're going to talk about is the retirement stage, right? The 60 plus stage. This plan needs to be very, very simple, right? And something that's very easy to follow, right? Because we don't have a chance of falling down anymore. We don't have that opportunity, right? To fall down anymore. So we need to look at something where we're looking at making sure that everything is conservative and everything is very grounded for that client. Okay. And at this point, obviously the best advisor is somebody who has retirement income history, somebody who is a specialist in making a retirement plan, right? Because again, we can no longer rebound. There's no fall down stage anymore. And everything that needs to be to the best of forecasting guaranteed, right? I'm using those terms because of the fact that none of us have a crystal ball. We can't really see. Again, to the best of our forecasting abilities, what we're planning out is going to be guaranteed for that client, right?
Yeah. And I mean, there are red flags to watch out for to find out if there is a mismatch of what you need, your life stage, and the kind of advisor you have. One of the things is this one size fits all plans. If you find that it feels like the plan was kind of like brought up really fast without any kind of question asking, that's a big red flag. There's an over focus on growth, ignoring protection. So yeah, you might have somebody who promises to make your investments work harder, but they ignore protecting, your wealth building. Advisors who talk more than they listen is a big red flag. And literally no follow-up or check-ins. It's literally the last time you talked to your advisor was years ago when you signed your insurance documentation. And that was literally 10 years ago. You now have 2 kids, a husband, and a house. That is a red flag that your advisor is not right for your life stage. Now, how do you adjust your advice based on someone's life stage? Do you offer planning, beyond just selling products? And how do you stay connected after their first meetings? Those are those kind of better questions you should be asking, or actually hoping that your advisor asking you. How do I know if a financial advisor actually has my best interest in mind? And, really great example of this is when you hear your advisor over focus on something that sounds really good in a product, when they've sold you on this type of life insurance policy that they don't necessarily focus on the protection part of it, which is what life insurance is for, but they oversold it as a retirement tool. At the end of the day, it may be a great financial wealth building strategy for you. But if you're the kind of person who's still living paycheck to paycheck, if you're the person who keeps working overtime and still feel like your debt's not going down, and they haven't even asked you questions around your paycheck to paycheck, your budget, your debt, you know that they're just selling you a product. That is a red flag.
Now, if you might be thinking, what if I'm still living paycheck to paycheck? What if I have debt and feel embarrassed to even talk to someone? If that's you got to come to our next episode. Can an advisor help me if I'm still in debt or living paycheck to paycheck?
So we're going to show you why you don't need to be ready to get help. The right advisor meets you where you are and helps you move forward. So go watch that next video. Let's keep moving forward together.